Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of King of the Hill, I want to talk about Titania of the Fairies. I looked this up 3 different times and got 3 different answers, so the one I'm going with is Titania. That's how I believe you pronounce it. Titania, like many fairy cards, has an aura ability. Titania can either play an extra minion anywhere or return an opposing minion to its owner's hand. Titania runs the risk of being strictly better than the Supreme Overlord, but cannot return your own minions. It's rare that I do this with the Supreme Overlord anyway, but the option isn't there anyway, which helps balance the cards. 6 of the 12 fairy cards have choices on them, but not all of them are meaningful, a problem I originally expressed with the Spirit of the Forest, since you only get 1 double tap per turn. Fairy Ballet and Magic Acorns, to draw a card and play an extra action, is almost meaningless. On occasion it matters, but rarely. Glimmer is pretty scripted. Stall until you can close a base, then buff itself up. Puck does offer a meaningful choice, but drawing a card and playing an extra action are not even remotely equivalent, and I draw the card when I have no action to play. Enchantment is pretty interesting because it affects all minions, but it tends to be a stall tactic until Playful Tricks destroys it. And then there is Titania. The Spirit of the Forest made this card very powerful, but before then, I found that there was a real dilemma. To me, Titania said, I am greatly changing the presence on a base. Am I slowing you down or speeding myself up? It wasn't always a guarantee that either option was automatic. Yes, playing extra minions is great. There aren't many minions who generate those extra plays, and there is usually some condition. Granted, Titania's minion can be played anywhere, but this has great burst potential for the same base. The only problem is, who am I playing? Glimmer can also become a 5, but as one of my absolute favorite minions in the game, I have a hard time wasting her as a big drop. That extra minion could be a Puck, leading into an extra action. I do like the idea of building your own ghostly arrival, but I'd expect that the extra minion comes from your partner faction. The only question is whether to focus on stealing 1 base or diversifying for 2. But what about the case for returning an opposing minion? To highlight how powerful this is, you need to consider how often it cannot happen. First, there is the direct counter of Ship's Engineer, which may still provide a stall tactic, just not the one you were expecting. There are about 22 different instances of cards from being returned or affected by Titania. This isn't an exact search, because there's always another way of wording a card differently, looking at you stalling, but most of those cards prohibit cards from affecting the card. As far as immunity to minions, I can only think of 2, Laser Sword and the base neutral space. So Titania offers a rare counter to any base that is completely dependent on actions or power counters. The only way to block it is to be immune to almost anything, which means that not much can be done. Do you have a problem with a double-shielded Cyberback? Titania can fix that, at least for now. So I think both options are meaningful, and I find myself using both. However, I do have a slight preference for the extra minion, since it is more of a guarantee. There are times when I absolutely need to beam up an opposing minion, but I'm only stalling, not necessarily winning. If I have a chance to overtake the base and use another minion to finish it off, taking that minion out of play, I'm more inclined to take it. That's what made the Spirit of the Forest so powerful for Titania herself. You get to do both, and it's this type of interesting choice that I wish existed more prevalently for the fairies. I think the idea of flexibility is really interesting, but the overall quality of choices is a bit lacking in execution. Don't blame Titania though. To highlight my preference for the extra minion play, I wanted to provide some examples that work well in the fairy context. There's a fun time traveler play where Titania can play Dr. Wen, who returns and plays Titania, who can play a repeater perfect. That's 14 power stemming from just your minion play, and a chance to recur one of your best actions. Suddenly, those draw a card and play an extra action plays make a lot of sense, because you can play the action of your choice. Finishing off with an enchantment for a total burst of 17 is definitely serviceable. I mentioned that building your own ghostly arrival is a lot of fun, as is chaining Titania into ghostly arrival. Spectre makes for a great extra minion play, particularly because it doesn't come from your hand. Using Puck and Titania to thin out your hand quickly to get into Spectre range, in addition to Door to the Beyond range, can create a large burst when you consider that Hauntings boost as well. And since no one ever really talks about fairy ghosts, let me just say that Spirit loves Glimmer and that the minion can be destroyed anywhere. When you have an action as potent as Super Future Space Armor Power, you may want to play as many minions as possible and grab more than one base. Titania is useful because she gives the mythic horses an extra minion play when most of their minion plays are local to a base with a minion. Puck can play Togetherness Power to play a Sea Star, who can play Titania to play another minion, perhaps Starlight. That's 16 base power and 24 with armor power, not to mention any boost that Starlight receives. This could easily be at least 12 power on 2 different bases. An extra minion is always useful, but these examples just highlight how a high-powered minion leading to more minions can be powerful. There isn't a whole lot else to say about a minion with straightforward abilities, and that simplicity can be refreshing. What do you think of Titania? What ability do you choose more often? Let me know in the comments. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.